Hey folks, how's it going? Dr. Spin. I got another showdown post for you guys by a couple of artists with really close stylistic ties to one another, but only one of them could go on to be in my top 20 for 2025. On one side, I've got Steven Wilson's The Overview versus David Gilmour's Luck and Strange. Steven Wilson's Overview is his most recent, quite ambitious album. This sees him returning a little bit to his progressive rock roots. It's a 45-minute album with 2 tracks on it, and it's a concept album that talks a little bit about the relationship between everyday experience as a human being and the sort of vastness of the cosmos. And certainly by its very nature, this concept is a very large one, but it's one he tackles pretty well in a way that's very relatable. It's got some great musical moments. It's got some really great lyrical moments. Overall, very successful album, and sort of, in some might argue, a return to form for him. Now, we're going to look at that in comparison, of course, to David Gilmour's Luck and Strange. David Gilmour, of course, being the guitar player for Pink Floyd, and quite obviously a big influence on Steven Wilson. And if you don't believe me, you should go back and check out Porcupine Tree's The Sky Moves Sideways. That album is almost a tribute to the Wish You Were Here era of Pink Floyd. Now, as David Gilmour's most recent release, it shows, of course, some of the wear and tear on David Gilmour's voice that you would come to expect from a person that's been doing things as long as he has. And it does have a few little songwriting clunky things going on with it, but overall has some amazing moments. And I'll tell you, his guitar playing is left completely unchanged. I think it's as beautiful and expressive as it's ever been, maybe even more so. And he finds really great ways to set that guitar playing out in front over the course of this album. But when looking at these two, which path should we take? Well, David Gilmour, first of all, doesn't owe us anything. He has been a prominent voice in some of the most creative rock music ever produced. As a member of Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon, Wish You Were Here, that stuff. One could hardly fault him for making an album that maybe in some ways could be perceived as lacking ambition. And that sounds harsh to say it that way, but he wanted to make an album that he enjoyed making. And he made this album with his closest friends. His wife did the lyrics. His daughter made a vocal performance on it. And he's not stressed at all about whether people are going to like it or they're not. He's going to make an album that he likes to have. And so in some ways, it's a little bit predictable, but there's comfort in that predictability. If you like his work with Pink Floyd, you'll like this here. But at the same time, how many times can you slip down to the relative minor and start wailing and it not sound like Pink Floyd? He does the things that sound good for him and have always sounded good. You cannot fault Steven Wilson for lacking ambition. Again, as a guy who's been doing what he's doing for quite a while, it takes, I think, some reflectiveness to come back to something that he was kind of known for and has sort of fought in the past, having a stigma of being a progressive rock musician at a time when progressive rock probably wasn't too well thought of. But him going back and looking at that as a vehicle for these big concepts in this album and realizing it so well is another great entry in Steven Wilson's largely successful catalog. So I'm going to give it to The Overview. Agree or disagree? Please sound off below and then head over to my YouTube channel where you'll find more posts on independent artists and classic deep dive reviews.